Hello, fellow Gunters. Monster Hunter Rise player numbers are on a Monstrous Ascendance Trend. Even before the announcement of Monster Hunter Ascendance, people were starting to try Rise after the final DLC for Monster Hunter Wilds, but since the trailer, it has spiked up. Help a lot the frequent sales while writing this, it was available for 10 bucks with the Sunbreak expansion included. Anyways, because of this, I got the worry of people that come from Wilds trying Gunlance and being totally lost. There are myriad differences between both games, even though they belong to the same series. And Rise Gunlance in particular is a vastly different experience from one game to another. I have done this guide for people coming from Wild, so you will not be lost. Let's start. The very most noticeable thing you will experience when starting a new file is the huge lack of mobility you have over Wilds. Wilds base Gunlance has the best base mobility of the whole series. That's primarily because of two moves, the moving shell and the moving sweep, that allows you to get closer to the monster very fast at medium distance and even position yourself easily anywhere. And Rise is absolutely lacking in both moves. Because of that, your first experience with Gunlance is going to be awfully lousy. You have absolutely no good moving and position moves when you start the game. Neither shells nor sweep moves you forward in any significant way. Your only moving option other than sheathing the weapon will be using hops and the forward lunge. And they are nerfed from World and Wilds games, so you move even less in this game. So, Gunlance move is awful, slow, and clunky? Actually, not. It is the total opposite, being one of the weapons, if not the best, with the fastest short, mid, and far range movement of the game. All this is because Rise and Sunbreak Gunlance gameplay revolves around Blast Dash. There are two Blast Dash switch skills, regular and reverse. Switch skills are customizable options for certain inputs for each weapon. Getting into this case, you can decide what happens when you hold your shell button between Blast Dash and charged shells. This means that if you pick Blast Dash, you will be unable to use charged shells, but don't worry, because charged shells royally suck in this game and aren't worth using with any weapon. So to Blast Dash, once selected, you only have to hold the shell button until you see a flash and then release it. You may keep the shell button held and you will auto fly, but there is no need and is a lot quicker to just blast as soon as possible most of the time. Once you are on the air, you have multiple options, but let not get too ahead and go to the most important point of Blast Dash, how to get it. Good news, you can get it very, very early in the game. The only requirement is to have 8 different gun lances. In this example, I got it with the 2 first gun lances of Bone, Kamura, and Iron series, and then the ones done with Lamb Gobi and Vespoid monster pieces. In the current game, it is even easier since you get the Defender series too. In this second example, I skipped Lamb Gobi thanks to the Defender series. Once unlocked, your mobility in combat will improve exponentially, being able to reach the monsters anywhere in a couple seconds. The best thing about Blast Dash is that it is not a single use, but you can use it normally up to 3 times in a row. While you are in the air by a Blast Dash or a jump of any kind, you can then use the shoulder plus shell button to use the Blast Dash once again. There is the alternative input of holding again that has some different qualities, but I don't want this video to make a complete Blast Dash tutorial. I have that video already done if you want to check all the nuances. What is important to know is your most common attacks while you are on the air. If you use your melee button while flying, you will do a very fast slam that, as usual, can be combo into a burst. This is your fastest way to do damage. Then, as an alternative, you may shell while you are on the air. This will make you float mid-air and enable to keep shelling on place. Use the regular slam or the very best option, Hail Cutter. I have avoided until this moment to talk about what the game calls Silkbind attacks. Silkbind's attacks are special moves that consume the bug gauge at the bottom of the screen. Moves and spends 1 or 2 then, depending on the move, the bug will have a different recover time. For example, Ground Splitter has a whooping 20 seconds cooldown that is a lot of time, while Hail Cutter only is 10 seconds. Wirebug economy is a big thing for Gunlance in this game, and skills that reduce the recovery like Wirebug Whisperer or Wind Mattle are highly coveted by Gunlance players. Your starting Silkbind attacks are Hail Cutter and Guard Edge. Guard Edge is the equivalent of a perfect guard in Monster Hunter Wilds. When you use it, you are protected for a little more than a second. If the monster hits you in that time, then you get some sharpness back and can follow up with slam into burst, wyvern fire, or straight into a worm stake. Yes, in a certain way is more powerful than a perfect guard, but being tied to a gauge really limits its use. Don't get too attached to this move in low and high rank because you will replace it with reverse blast dash in master rank. But I'm getting once again too ahead. What is the true most important move is Hail Cutter. High Cutter alongside Blast Dash are the most useful and core Gunlance moves of the whole game. At first glance, it doesn't seem too useful. When used from the ground, you do a big slow jump, you then reload your Gunlance midair and do a powerful slam. Upon landing, you also recover a chunk of the Wyvern fire gauge. The Hail Cutter Slam is the single most powerful melee attack of the Gunlance, and even has the special quality of dealing double status and elemental damage. But the whole operation takes too long for being useful against fast monsters or small windows of opportunity. But then there is one important thing. Hail Cutter can be used mid-air. You can use it after shelling once in the air from either a Silkbind jump or a Blast Dash. When you do it midair, you skip the slow jump part of it and go straight into the reload and air slam. This dramatically improves the speed of it and negates one of the big disadvantages of Blast Dash, that is that each time you blast, you consume a shell. This is huge for the wide and long types that have smaller ammo clip and allows you with a wide gun lance to blast dash, air shell twice, and then slam and burst at full power. In Monster Hunter Rise, wide shells while busting don't have any diminished damage like it happens on World and previous games. All shell types with Hail Cutter do similar damage when using Blast Dash with Hail Cutter tactics. This is so core of the weapon in Rise that it is even a winning tactic in Master Rank. Furthermore, there is a kind of open secret that is Hail Cutter interacts with the actions that the Palamutes do in combat. Hail Cutter causes the dogs to use their strongest attacks. In particular, if they are using the chain, that is the Palamute's default weapon, they will spin it, and with a good leveled up and equipped Palamute, it deals hundreds of damage with each use. A final important note about switch skills is that they kind of make up for the lack of focus mode in Rise. Focus mode in Wilds allows for easy targeting and being able to change directions mid-combo. In Monster Hunter Rise, you can't, and the combos and moves will continue in the direction you are facing, with maybe some room to adjust to a side, but nothing too radical. But when you input a Silkbind attack, you have the option to aim it to any direction. This means Silkbind attacks can be used to adjust your aim and land moves you would miss otherwise. The room to adjust is also generous and can apply to things like the direction where you fire the stake after a guard edge. It allows you to parry a charge that goes through you and land the stake on the monster's tail that is now behind you. I can go on, but the message is very clear. Silkbind attacks are very core to complement the weakness of Gunlance. The other switch skill you can unlock on low rank is Ground Splitter. Ground Splitter is not bad, is a strong attack that buffs your Gunlance, shelling attacks by a 20% for 45 seconds. That is nice. But it has the big problem that you can only use either Ground Splitter or Hail Cutter. Then, even after the buffs, the high cooldown is too much that early, and you lose the bonus if you sheath by whatever reason. For late game, you want to be used to Hail Cutter, so that is it for now. The other thing of Hail Cutter is being able to reduce the cooldown of Wyvern Fire. Unlike in Monster Hunter Wilds, in Rise Wyvern Fire is much more limited. It has a huge cooldown time that can't be reduced by attacking and you only have one use. Artillery skill greatly reduces the cooldown, but still is not enough to make it a move you use often unless you are using Hail Cutter. At Artillery 2 or better, just 2 uses of Hail Cutter is enough to use it again. Wyvern Fire usefulness is lower in Master Rank, but in low rank is by far your strongest move. In Rise, also Wyvern Fire while charging as autoguard being extremely good at this point to be able to deal safe damage. One of the most important differences of Wyvern Fire are the shell types. In Monster Hunter Wilds, the strongest Wyvern Fire belongs to the wide Gunlance type. This is not the same on Rise. In Rise, Wyvern Fire hits 3 times, except for the long shell type, where it hits 4, making it 25% stronger than the rest. Long shelling also seems to have a dramatic, longer range here, plus its wormstake cannon hits more time. Long shell type also has an additional shell over wilds, and the burst fire is equivalent to the two other shell types. Because of all of this, long type gun lances are just better until you reach the end of high rank. Normal shell type as usually only gets a bit stronger burst but is weaker at everything else. Wide in wilds is weird. The differences aren't numbers but mechanics. Wide charged shells can overcharge into red, making them deal even more damage. Wormstake Cannon is radically different, being a single tick that deals blunt damage and can actually stun monsters. The bad news is that both things are underpowered and you can't really build around those. With the standard Hail Cutter and Blast Dash heavy gameplay, the difference between shell types are minimal, and what makes one or other better or worse are the stats on the proper gun lance. Since I guess you don't play to stay much time on low and high rank, your best course of action is to stick with the long gun lance with the higher shell level you can craft and go on. Shell level goes up to 3 in low rank, level 5 in high rank, and level 8 in master rank. Shell levels are kind of equivalent to power level in Wilds, but are not exactly the same thing. In Wilds, you can have a gun lance with the max power level called there. Strong deal less shell damage than a gun lance with slightly strong power level. This is because in Wilds, shell damage scales with the attack stat of your gun lance, and a big attack difference can make up for the weaker shell power. In Rise and Sunbreak, this is not the case. A level 4 gun lance will always do higher damage than a level 3 one, regardless of attack. There is absolutely no scaling on gun lance shelling. This is both a blessing and a curse. The curse is that skills that buff your attack are a lot less effective on gun lance, since will not apply to a big part of your attacks. The blessing is that you can invest into other kinds of skills without sacrificing much damage output. Gunlance is currently not underpowered at all compared with the other weapons. It was at a rougher spot at launch, but since then, they have greatly buffed shell damage and switch skills and is on a comfortable mid-tier. They literally increased the shelling damage on high-rank gun lances by roughly a 20% to get an idea. The lesser return in melee skills is also accounted for by the master rank switch skill called Erupting Cannon. Erupting Cannon replaces your regular Wormstake. It is an ultra-fast, powerful single shell, but has the side effect of buffing all your melee, both physical and elemental damage by a 30%. This is like getting 100% affinity and critical boost 1 for free, and stacks with affinity in all other ways of damage. Thanks to that melee damage on Gunlance is good on Master Rank. The downside is, of course, that the regular Wormstake Cannon is not very viable in Master Rank, is not good for shelling, and is awfully bad for melee over Erupting Cannon. I'm going to continue talking about the big differences. Another one to consider is that sharpness has an impact on shelling. If your sharpness drops to yellow, you will do less shell damage. In Wilds, this is not the case, and you keep the same until you get red sharpness and your shelling gets disabled. And to make things worse, shelling has a much higher impact on sharpness than in Wilds. In Wilds, most attacks only consume X 0.1 sharpness. That is, then shells consume the same sharpness as a single melee attack. In Rise, it is 1 except for stuff like wide shells that for whatever reason consume twice the sharpness. This makes adding a sharpness handling skill a must-do for builds. Even at low rank, you will find shells underperforming because of low, if any, green sharpness, and you have to aim for green ones. At the end game, Gunlance sharpness gets solved by the absolute Broken Heaven Sent skill from Amatsu. This skill makes it so if you do a certain action I haven't talked about yet, that is equivalent to a full reload. You also get a lot of sharpness back. Meanwhile, try to add some protective polish or razor sharp. This is hard on low rank and early high rank. High rank, but lucky we get Bagel Goose armor that comes with that and the usual Gunlance package. A good thing is that you can craft decorations too without having to rely on randomness. I have lots of armor and skills progression guides in my channel, and this video is already long enough, and I haven't finished yet. About reloads, by default, Gunlance doesn't get guard on quick or full reload. Besides, if you try to shell while your clip is empty instead of a quick reload, you will get a dumb animation. This will be one of the biggest challenges when coming for Wilds. You will see. Guard Reload is a switch skill that will be available near the end of high rank. This one reloads both your shells and your worm stake or erupting cannon. The problem is that it will only reload 3 shells and that you can't slam after it, so it's really bad for the normal shell type. Guard Reload is a lot less bad if you use Hail Cutter a lot since it reloads your shells, but is only really neat for the wide type all around. Once again, the skill Heaven Sent will replace the practical use of this skill since it reload all shells and is not restricted to just one. Guarding itself is also not too hot because the existence of both Guard Edge and in Master Rank Reverse Blast Dash. Reverse Blast Dash is a Silkbind action that replaces Guard Edge. In a few words, this skill is a Blast Dash, but better. First is almost instant, and you don't have to wait a split second charging. Then you can decide in which direction to go. Then you get large immunity frames when you use it, way more immunity than evading with Evasion Window 5. And even if you fail it, you get super armor, and you will continue even if you get it shortly after the immunity. And to make it better, you deal some blunt damage with your shield and can stun monsters with it. The only disadvantage is that it consumes wire bugs, but the cooldown is short and you can invest in skills to make it a non-issue. This move is the core of the Gunlance in Master Rank, since it allows you to evade, move, and start an attack in a split second and consolidates Gunlance as the fastest weapon in the game. This switch skill voids the need for Evade Extender, Guard Up, or Evasion Window, so you can focus your build in more damage, sharpness, and wire bugs. So the to-go Gunlance plan is to blast, air shell one or more, hail cutter, and then depending on the opportunity window and build to burst, or go for an erupting cannon or melee. This setup is very dominant and the top damage. But before closing, I want to say that is not the only viable style. For a pure grounded defensive style, you can use a wide gun lance using the combo of shell, erupting cannon, shell combined with guard reload. The advantage of this build is that you can forget about any attack or affinity skill and stack as many survival ones you want. In Sunbreak, there is a skill embolden that stacks on guard and allows you to get scarlet. That would be something like guard plus 10. The guard skill in Rise is different from Wilds. It has 5 levels instead of 3. Of these, only the levels 1, 3, and 5 improve your guarding capacities. Embolden improves the guarding with each level, and as said, they stack. So Guard 1 and Embolden 2 is equivalent to Guard 5, giving you a plus 30 to the guard threshold. With all max, there is very, very few attacks able to break through your guard. Normally, investing so much in a building for guarding is nonsense, since with just a reverse blast dash, you can just evade without using a point. So this is the kind of build that can make use of it. This build also makes use of Ground Splitter since you are shelling most of the time, and is a straight 20% to all your damage. Ground Splitter has super armor, and with enough defense and regeneration, you can berserk through lots of attacks, recovering health faster than you lose it. This is the kind of build for someone who wants a chill time. Then the other playing style is the Bullet Barrage Spam. Bullet Barrage is a Silkbind attack you unlock at Master Rank. Use 2 wire bugs and make you jump forward, firing everything at the monster. All your shells, your Wyvern Fire, and your Worm Stake. The move also has the capacity to recover your Wyvern Fire and reload your shells and stakes. This is the overall strongest Gunlance move, but the Wirebug use and slowness when it has to recover the Wyvern Fire limits it. But it is the most cathartic of all the styles. This one is also a pure shelling build with no melee skills required. Since the long shell type gets a stronger Wyvern Fire and Worm Stake, this is the preferred one for this one, and the others are a lot weaker. This is composed by the Amatsu Gunlance that has a passive that makes all Silkbind attacks a 20% stronger. This means 20% stronger bullet barrage, so is the single best Gunlance for this style, no contest. If you are using this, just be mindful of using the shockproof decoration or people will hate you. With all of this, we have that Gunlance have 3 playing styles. That is more than the 2 ones you got for Wilds. And the best is that they are radically different to whatever you do in Wilds. You can fly and sting, you can play as an unstoppable artillery platform, or as a human howitzer. I love Gunlance. I think that this is enough info dump for this video. I have literal dozen of guides about Rise with updated builds or going into each of the moves in my channel under the Sunbreak playlist. That includes the progression guide. I wanted to have as little spoilers and try to not repeat things as possible. If you ask me, I can go deeper into more Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak stuff. Tell me in the comments. See you in the Rise.